G'day folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another crazy dose of EV and net zero insanity in MGUY EV news for Sunday the 2nd of November 2025. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. So we're starting today with perhaps some good news. Just to give you a bit of background on the political situation in Australia at the moment, we have an awful hard left socialist government led by Anthony Albanese, well, led in the broadest sense of the word. And in opposition, we don't have an opposition. We have a coalition of the Liberal Party, which is supposed to be the centre-right party, which is basically just doing what the UK Conservatives are doing and just playing the game of being Labour light. And then we have the Nationals. They tend to be a little bit more solid in their beliefs. They don't just follow what Labour is doing. And they are in a coalition. And the news has come through today. Fantastic news, actually, for anyone who believes that net zero is just a complete scam and it's making us poorer by the minute. They have decided to scrap net zero after meeting. Fantastic. The Nationals have agreed to scrap a key policy, turning the heat up on Susan Lee, where she puts an extra S into her name, but it's pronounced Susan. That tells you all you need to know about the Liberal leader, doesn't it? The National Party has agreed to abandon Australia's emissions target of net zero by 2050, slapping pressure on Susan Lee as she tries to build unity in the coalition. Well, that ain't going to happen because the Liberal Party are a bunch of wets. National leaders David Littleproud confirmed the broadly expected position after emerging from a 3-hour-long party room meeting on Sunday. Fronting media, he said he was proud to say that our party room has got to unanimous position of scrapping net zero commitments by 2050. Bravo, is all I can say. A little while ago, we informed the opposition leader, Susan Lee, of the National Party's decision to scrap net zero by 2050 and to set a policy platform predicated on principles. Hallelujah, he told reporters in Canberra. Principles about a better, cheaper, fairer way to reduce our emissions and to have an energy policy that will actually work for Australians. This is music to my ears. It'll save jobs when you see thousands of jobs being lost and at risk even this week from Tomago. That's a smelter that is threatening to close up and move elsewhere because the price of energy, electricity, very energy intensive industry, smelting, and they just can't afford to keep going. You see the household stress on their energy bills. The move has put the junior coalition partners on a collision course with moderates. They're not moderates, they're frickin' wets in the Liberal Party who still support it. The coalition committed Australia to net zero by 2050 in 2021. It was a fractious issue then, with former Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his deputy Barnaby Joyce bashing out an agreement. Anyway, that is really great news for Australia. It shows some backbone from the opposition finally. Instead of just trying to play Labour's game and just say, oh, we'll just be a bit like Labour. Well, yes, we'll agree to net zero. No, we don't agree with net zero. It is absolutely disastrous policy for a country like Australia, which has a lot of energy intensive industry. And we have resources that can power the country for decades to come. And yet it's all shipped overseas where they just burn it anyway. They burn it somewhere else. But apparently this makes perfect sense when you've got the net zero mind virus, which all of Labour have got it, and most of the Liberals have got it. And now the Nationals have finally shaken themselves free of it, and this is excellent news. The Telegraph in the UK, and it's the same old story. Copper is the element that drives this mad net zero transition. It's used everywhere. It's used in wind turbine generators. It's used in EV batteries. The amount of copper that's going to be required even for just one generation of renewable energy is astro-freaking-nomical. And all it takes is for a little spike in the copper price for things to go pear-shaped. And like I've said before on previous videos, it takes a hell of a long time to open a new mine, the order of 10 to 15 years. And we are going to need more copper between now and 2050 than all the copper that has ever been mined in all of human history if we are going to meet net zero by 2050. Insanity. Record copper prices spark turmoil for green energy projects. Yay! Cost of manufacturing renewable technologies will surge, analysts warn. Record-setting copper prices have sparked turmoil for wind and solar farm developers who face rising costs to build green energy projects. Commodity analysts have warned that the cost of manufacturing renewable technologies, which rely heavily on copper, will surge after the industrial metal hit a record high on the London Metal Exchange. The price rose as high as $11,200 a tonne on Wednesday, extending its gains so far this year to more than 27%. In less than 1 year. It is on track for its best year since 27. Well, best year if you're selling copper, but worst year if you're buying the stuff to do net zero nutcasery. Although prices fell from their peak on Thursday, dipping to $11,183, like $17, they still remain elevated by historical standards. And of course, what will this mean? This will mean more people will try and chop the cables off EV chargers because they can sell it for scrap. This just goes to show how totally insane the whole net zero plan by 2050 really is. And in the US, we can see how the EV market is just tanking. Ford halts F-150 Lightning production indefinitely to focus on profitable brackets combustion engine pickups. What began as a temporary shutdown at Ford's Rouge EV factory near Detroit has quietly become a long-term strategic move. Production of the all-electric F-150 Lightning pickup is now paused indefinitely, with Ford choosing to concentrate its resources on more profitable petrol, hybrid and Super Duty pickups. Of course, because that's what people want. The pause was initially triggered by a fire at an aluminium plant in Oswego, New York, earlier this month, which disrupted the supply of key materials used in the Lightning's construction. However, Ford's latest financial report suggests the decision has now evolved beyond logistics. With aluminium still in short supply, that's another one. You know, all of these raw materials, you just need so much more of them under the net zero madness than you do just with business as usual. And EV margins under pressure, Ford is using the opportunity to rebalance production in favour of its highest earning trucks, which are the diesel and petrol trucks, quite frankly. Even if we have more availability of aluminium, the real lever for us is going to be our own upside, said CEO Jim Farley. So again, you know, people buy EV trucks if they're forced to, but really what they'd rather do is buy a diesel that can do 3 times the range and is far cheaper and far easier to maintain when it breaks. That's the reality. Similar issue at GM to lay off 3,300 workers building EVs and batteries as demand slows. It's all good news this week, isn't it? It's fantastic. General Motors is slashing production at its electric vehicle plant in Detroit, affecting more than 3,000 jobs there. Well, sorry, let me just say it's sad for the people losing their jobs. Don't get me wrong, but it's good news for the mad EV transition. And at 2 joint venture battery plants in response to a slowdown in EV demand. GM is dropping one of its 2 daily shifts at Factory Zero, which makes the GMC Hummer EV. Who would buy one of those? And electric versions of the Chevrolet Silverado, GMC Sierra and Cadillac Escalade. A person with knowledge of GM's production plans told Automotive News. The move will result in indefinite layoffs for about 1,200 workers at the Detroit assembly plant and 550 people at the Ultium Cells plant in Warren, Ohio, the person said. About 1,560 Ultium Cells workers in Ohio and Tennessee will be temporarily laid off while battery production stops for about half of next year, the person said. In the meantime, GM is shutting Factory Zero for nearly a month. The Detroit plant went down October the 27th and will resume production November 24th on 2 shifts before moving to a single shift January 5th after the holiday break, the person said. Once the subsidies and the freebies and the tax incentives go, so does the demand. And GM and Ford are both seeing the writing on the wall, and they're going back to building the cars that actually people want to buy. This is a story that's got a lot of attention here in Australia. It's quite funny. It's quite funny because of the location of where these cars are being stored next to a military base, a Royal Australian Air Force base. No problem there. Chinese cars stockpiled near Australia's largest airbase, labelled a security threat. Yes, because they are spying machines on wheels. Security experts say a large number of unsold Chinese cars parked opposite the Amberley RAAF base is a ticking time bomb in more ways than one. New cars continue to be stockpiled in temporary holding yards around Australia as they await pre-delivery and shipment to dealerships. And the latest example uncovered is a large number of Chinese vehicles parked adjacent to Australia's biggest airbase, raising concerns from security experts. Just days after about 1,600 BYD vehicles were deemed to have been stored at Jamberoo Action Park, a family fun park not far from Port Kembla, south of Sydney, without local council approval, hundreds of new Chery and Omoda JQ vehicles have now been spotted in a makeshift car park directly opposite the main entrance and pass office for RAAF base Amberley, southwest of Brisbane. The influx of new auto brands and models in Australia, particularly from China, has led to bottlenecks in the pre-delivery process between their arrival at shipping ports in capital cities and dealerships around the country. The surge in new vehicle imports has led to temporary holding yards being established outside many Australian capitals, including on farmland in the New South Wales Hunter Valley, excellent, as well as vacant blocks, airport precincts, and now it seems military installations, excellent. One security expert called for urgent action, warning that the connected car functionality of some Chinese vehicles could be used for hybrid warfare if the Chinese government chose to weaponize the technology. They have cameras and LiDAR and microphones that essentially allow real-time observation of what's around them. The manufacturer has access to all of those things, Chief Strategy Officer at CyberCX, Alistair McGibbon, told news.com.au. Mr. McGibbon, a former national cybersecurity advisor to the Turnbull government who previously warned that modern vehicles are listening and surveillance devices, said electric vehicles could be turned into ticking time bombs. Could you theoretically cause harm using these vehicles? Yes, you could have the vehicles have accidents, but you could also turn off the safety features for things like charging, which prevent these things from blowing up. Exactly right. There are people who can do that from the manufacturer by literally updating the software on the device. This is so true. As well as the spying issue, which is bad enough, they can also, for example, a battery is a very unstable device. It needs a lot of software and sensors to make sure it doesn't go into thermal runaway. So what happens if you just turn off those safety devices? And, you know, the first time it's charged, it will go into thermal runaway. I mean, that theoretically, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but why not? Why not would this happen? You just tweak some parameters in the battery management system and the software that controls it, and it will not prevent a thermal runaway in it, and it will let it charge too fast. Absolutely disastrous. Absolutely, and hilarious as well. Finally, we've got a couple of stories which are always interesting. It's about how the whole climate madness is slowly collapsing, because the reality is that people look out of the window and they don't see the world coming to an end. They see, you know, a microscopic increase in global temperature, which is actually having quite a beneficial effect in many ways. Cold kills more people than heat does. The increase in CO2 actually has greened the planet significantly over the last 20, 30 years. Agricultural yields are at all-time highs. I mean, we've got more food than we know what to do with. And so the net zero trumps everything mantra, which has been the accepted line for the last 30, 40 years, is falling apart because people can see that when net zero trumps everything, it actually causes more harm than good to people, to the average person, like it's doing here in Australia. We are broke in this country because of the price of electricity. It doesn't matter that we're all broke because net zero trumps everything. And now, Bill Gates, one of the biggest climate scaremongers on the planet, has suddenly had, he's been inoculated perhaps from the climate and net zero virus. Now he tells us Bill Gates backflips and says climate change no threat to humanity after all. Why are people panicking about the weather? Climate doomer Bill Gates thinks everyone should just calm down. He believes climate change is a serious problem, but it won't be the end of humanity as we know it. A 17-page memo released Tuesday by the billionaire reveals. Gates now thinks scientific innovation will curb any threats, real and perceived, to the planet's climate, and it's instead time for a strategic pivot away from focusing on limiting rising temperatures to fighting poverty and preventing disease. I mean, this is just common sense. Common sense. And I've always said that technology will curb threats. I've always believed that. There's no point in trying to mitigate climate change. Adaptation is the only way. I can't believe that it's taken these intelligent people so long to come round to this view. The 70-year-old said in the memo the world's primary goal should now work to prevent suffering, particularly for those in the toughest conditions in the world's poorest countries. Those are the countries which net zero hits the hardest, because they're the ones that are prevented from industrializing and growing their economies because they're not allowed to get the benefits of fossil fuels. AP reports if given a choice between eradicating malaria and a 1/10 of a degree increase in warming, Gates told reporters, "I'll let the temperature go up 0.1 degree to get rid of malaria." People don't understand the suffering that exists today. It is absolutely unbelievable that I'm finally reading this, because the blinkered view that people have had of climate for the last 40 years has been it trumps everything. Nothing. We're saving the planet. I mean, guys, we're saving the planet. We've got to do everything we can. Doesn't matter if people suffer. And now some balance is coming back. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. And finally, another interesting article from one of my favorite sites, written by my friend Anthony Watts. What's up with that? This is the story of how a previous climate alarmist has come to realize the folly of his ways. And these kind of stories are always incredibly instructive for the rest of us. See how the thought process works. And, hopefully it will be a process that many more people will go through eventually. It's just a matter of time. Ted Nordhaus's epiphany. Ted Nordhaus deserves a nod for doing what few in the climate establishment ever do, admitting he was wrong. In his essay, "I Thought Climate Change Would End the World, I Was Wrong," the Free Press, October 19th, Nordhaus concedes that his worldview was built on apocalyptic models sprung from faulty assumptions. That sentence alone marks a watershed moment in the long, strange saga of climate alarmism. It's rare to see one of the movement's own architects confess that its foundations were exaggerated, its projections implausible, and its tone hysterical. It's what I've been saying for, 2 decades now. Nordhaus has co-founded the Breakthrough Institute, an organisation that has long tried to make climate activism sound reasonable by marrying environmental rhetoric to talk of innovation and modernisation. For years, he and his colleagues accepted the central dogma that the planet faced an existential crisis unless humanity swiftly abandoned fossil fuels. They were not content to question the science. They amplified it. The heating of the earth, Nordhaus once wrote in 2007, will cause the sea levels to rise and the Amazon to collapse and trigger a series of wars over basic resources like food and water. Can you understand now why we have brought up an entire generation of children who are coming into adulthood now who are scared shitless of climate change? It's absolutely despicable. It's abuse, really. It's abuse of those children to make them so terrified. Now, almost 2 decades later, he confesses that such scenarios were never plausible. The old models assumed high population growth, high economic growth, and slow technological change, a trifecta of contradictions that cannot coexist. He points out that the fertility rates are falling, economies are decarbonising on their own, and technological progress accelerates efficiency regardless of political slogans. His admission is blunt: I no longer believe this hyperbole. That's refreshing honesty. It certainly is. Go and read all those articles. Go and read the Bill Gates article and this Ted Nordhaus, I can't say his name, Ted Nordhaus article, because it's a psychological insight that it provides into how people turn away from alarmism and panic to sensible, sane, measured, scientific observation. And again, looking at Gates saying that technological advances will help enormously. I have always said that we will out-innovate any threat caused by climate change. And for us to try and modify the climate by our behaviour is a hiding to nothing. So it's great to see that some very high-profile people are coming to the same conclusion. Well, that was a very positive EV news. It wasn't quite so much insanity this week as actual sanity, which is refreshing to see. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye for now. If you'd like to support this channel and display your anti-EV credentials to your Tesla-owning neighbours at the same time, why not buy some awesome MGUY merchandise, like this mug, this baseball cap, or this t-shirt. Each high-quality item sports the MGUY No EVs sign, and they're all made to order, perfect for irritating the hell out of your local EV zealots. Visit store.mguy.tv or click the link in the description to check out the full range of products. And of course, you can always just buy me a coffee. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Thanks very much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any tips or stories, go there. If you'd like to watch another video, go there. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, go there. And please subscribe to the channel.